The ADIS tax initiative was launched to provide capacity building support to developing countries' tax authorities. This is welcome, but will not succeed in ensuring that countries are able to raise sufficient tax to fund sustainable development strategies until the global taxation system is reformed. And developing countries do not only need internal capacity building, but they need a voice and they need the ability to be able to participate in debates that shape the rules at the global level. ActionAid in the UK has recently started focusing on a tax treaty between UK and Malawi. Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world. UK currently has a taxation treaty with Malawi which dates back to 1955, before the country became independent. It's an extremely restrictive treaty, and UK is the country's third largest investor. And Malawi is one of the world's poorest countries, with only 300 doctors for a population of 16 million. An offer to Malawi to revise this treaty to allow Malawi greater discretion on tax multinational corporations operating there would be an excellent way of demonstrating a cross-government commitment to development and showing how global prosperity and UK's national interests can work in harmony with poverty eradication efforts. There's a lady called Stella who teaches at the Mwetu Primary School in Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi. In this school, there are 1,700 children in the primary school, and there are only 12 qualified teachers, and there are 8 student teachers. Stella teaches grade 1 and has 285 children in her class. And she says, and this must be such a simple say, she says, it's very difficult. Can you imagine a teacher teaching 285 children in this country? It's unthinkable. She just said it's very difficult. The school doesn't have enough buildings, and with many students having to learn outside. Now, if we want to invest in children, if we want to invest in youth, and if we want to invest in the national capital, how can a government do so without having sufficient resources? So let me conclude by saying that there is still a lot of hope that's holding out. The previous set of goals, the MDGs, were very sector focused, were not focused on structural issues, and had very little country ownership. They were northern driven, and there was very little resonance with the poorest countries. The process of developing the SDGs was very different. They had been much more inclusive, much more consultative, and I had the opportunity of being in Liberia, where the high-level panel in the run-up to the finalization of the SDGs was convening in the capital, Monrovia, and it was really very energizing to see the energy in the governments, amongst youth, amongst civil society, to have and to be part of these discussions, the consultations. But there are some real risks for that the SDGs may not reach the potential. First, on the tax issue that I just mentioned, unless we do something significant on tax, it's very difficult to get the resources. The UK aid strategy that was announced by this government just before Christmas makes very little mention of the SDGs. So there's a real question of connection between how UK will spend its aid money and how will it contribute to the SDG agenda. There's very little funding for emerging civil society and social movements and their participation in the implementation, and which means that if you really want strong, independent women's rights organizations who are capable of holding their governments to account, that might not happen if they don't have the right resources. And then there are concerns around climate change and the funding that has been committed. We have welcomed the UK government's commitment to adaptation finance, but we still think that that's not anywhere near enough of what we need to do as one of the developed countries and very keen on international development. So let me end by 2 quotes. The first one is a quote, the other one is a saying. When I was working at the community level way back in the 1980s in central India, we were sitting at the community level and we were working on what we call our 3-year plans. And so I was asking members in the community, so what shall we do about health? What shall we do about education? What shall we do about livelihoods? Because those were the 3 sectors, and our finance department had created a template. So I had to populate my budget based on those 3 templates. And the women started talking. They started talking about everything. They started talking about life, the difficulty, the hardship of water, everything else. I said, no, let's talk about health, education and livelihoods. And I think finally one of them got so exasperated. She said, we don't live our life in compartments like that. So I said, good lesson. And I think the SDGs might address some of the compartmentalization that we saw in the MDGs. And the second one is my favorite African proverb, which says, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. SDGs provide us the opportunity to walk together as a framework of accountability that can build a global solidarity and break those barriers of the global north, global south, the east and the west, the rich and the poor, if you're really committed to those goals. And a final announcement from my colleague here, Ruth Kelly. Ruth, if you can raise your hand. She'll also answer all the difficult questions on my behalf. I talked about the tax campaign, and there's a Make Tax Fair tour that's coming to Oxford on 20th April, which is a Wednesday, from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. And you can find details about it on our website, or do contact Ruth for any further information. Thank you so much for your time and attention.